I really want to start with the social media ban story. This was big headlines yesterday, and I think it's because this is something that's seen a push in other countries here, including the U.S. and Canada, is this idea of banning teens, at least younger teens, from social media or from certain forms of internet access. And I guess it's kind of complicated because, at least for my part, Sarah, it's the kind of thing that in principle I'm somewhat supportive of, but in practice, and especially with this current ban that the UK is pushing, not only do I think it's not exactly what's needed, but I think it's being done for completely the wrong reasons. It's being done for a specific goal by certain people, by certain ideologies, let's say, that are in power, and not for the clearer protection of kids.
Yes, I'm concerned about the fact that, okay, so you have these young people who are being indoctrinated in their schools. The schools in the UK are atrocious.
Yes.
That's somebody who went to one. And then, they've been getting, I think, a lot of their information from the internet. And there's this concerted effort to sort of prevent them from having this other information, this other exposure, I guess you could say. And that's one of my concerns is, like, in theory, I actually do think that social media is a bad thing. I think that kids should go outside and they should actually, like, spend, human time with their friends. Yeah. Like, don't get me wrong. I'm in favor of all those things.
Kids shouldn't be stuck in front of a screen no matter what. And that includes the TV, not just social media. It's
100%.
It's so easy because it's a phone or a tablet, and a lot of parents just kind of treat that as this substitute babysitter to say, oh, keep the kid busy while I go do other things. Parents are busy. I understand the temptation for that, but it's there's health downsides just to the screen itself, regardless of what's on it. And then there's the fact that so much content out there is, what's the term, brain rot? That's a common term for a lot of the stuff that's out there on social media, whether it's on YouTube, on Instagram, on TikTok for sure. A lot of this kind of brain rot content.
It's like 30-second and then scroll to the next one kind of thing.
But screens in and of themselves, I say this as I'm surrounded in my studio by 8 different monitors. Screens are a form of brain rot themselves just by the physical effect of the light coming from the screen and that sort of thing. So there's already a negative effect to that there. But what the point here with this ban is that it doesn't actually ban YouTube Kids, which, frankly, YouTube Kids, the kids version of YouTube as an app or as a site, has terrible stuff on it. Absolutely horrible brain rot content that just is terrible for kids. So the fact that that's not being banned, and then certain messaging services are not being banned, I'd love to see some actual details on. I'm going to assume that Discord is not included in the ban. And it looks like there are
fascinating, isn't it?
It looks like there are certain websites and other platforms, maybe like, I don't know, Blue Sky, that lefty alternative to X, to Twitter. Maybe I don't see Reddit listed on there. Reddit is a cesspool of liberal ideology, leftist ideology. And Discord, as Sarah and I have talked about many times, a horrible, horrible opportunity for grooming and also for just communicating with really unsavory people to do certain things. We've seen evidence of these some of these trans shooters doing a lot of their planning through Discord servers.
Yes.
So the fact that these are not being banned, but then these apps that get a lot of flack for having fake news on it, for having the wrong kind of ideas on it, like X, especially under Elon Musk's kind of at least attempted liberation of the platform from censorship. It's not actually going that far, but it's a lot better than it was at the time. This sort of direction is clear, that they're trying to clamp down on just the wrong ideas getting through, and they're doing it in the guise of, oh, well, we're trying to just protect the kids, so how could you have an objection to this?
Well, I kind of have two main issues here.
Yeah.
I mean, one of them is that I think that a parent's involvement is what would actually be necessary to save these kids. But also, on the other front is, well, how does the implementation work? And I think one of the main ways in which this would actually happen is when they introduce digital ID. And this is in a country in which 22,000 people are arrested every year for saying things that are deemed offensive online. So these individuals get tracked down because they said something about how they're opposed to the degree of mass immigration, for example, coming into the UK. They get a police officer coming up at their door to intimidate and arrest them.
Exactly.
You know, and so in this particular, in that environment, then you add digital ID. So we're watching everything that you do is really the implication, and it is true. Like they know who you are when you log on. They watch everything that you do on every platform, and it is on that basis that they're going to be able to crack down on which websites this 16-year-old or below is watching or interacting with. And I think that's horrifying. I mean, you want to talk about China and the different sorts of social control that they're engaged in. It's the very same thing, the digital ID that they use, where you log in when connecting to the internet to this government screen, and then you take a picture of yourself like a selfie in order to be fully identified, so that everything that you do gets tracked. That's why Taiwan, we just reported yesterday, came up with its little website to try and give Chinese citizens a way to report what's going on over there. You're seeing some of the very same things over in the UK. We're just more predisposed to thinking of the UK as a civilized free nation, but I don't think we do that on the basis of actual fact.
Yeah.
Increasingly, you look at the entire environment over there in the UK. I mean, no, it's like they'll show up at your door if you say something offensive.
Yes.
If you get stabbed, they'll say, I don't think you have been.
As we've covered,
the entire environment is one that moves away from freedom. And so I'm cautious about anything that is the government intruding further, even under the guise of something that I would oppose, or would support. I mean, I would, in theory, support pretty much anyone of any age using social media less.
Yes.
It's not good for us.
Exactly.
Right?
And this is the case of the better solution is just, kids under a certain age can't access the internet in any way whatsoever. But how would you enforce that without parents playing an active role? Because they could just sign in for their kid, and then their kid can do whatever they want still. And so this is the case of, look, if you want to actually sort of wean kids off of the negative effects of social media and the internet and screens, you need to actually just ban the screens entirely and say, no, you kids are forced to spend a certain amount of time outdoors or something like that. Or you're just not allowed to have access to a device. And in that case, either you are just completely invading a family and controlling what the kids do, or you are relying on the parents to do their job as far as enforcing that. So this kind of half measure, again, I think it's pretty clear that there's an ulterior motive going on here. And I think it's bumping into this concept of freedom, this concept of liberty, where the Catholic understanding is that the freedom you have the freedom to pursue the truth, that you have the freedom to practice the Catholic faith. That is the freedom. It's not about endorsing a freedom to do whatever you want. It's not about endorsing license. Yes, exactly. Liberty is about the liberty to serve God. And so this sense of clamping down on these liberties does not have this Catholic sense of, trying to decrease vice and decrease license and decrease degenerate behavior through certain laws. That is a Catholic pursuit. This is not that. And in fact, it will probably hurt people, especially kids' ability to discover the truth in the face of, as you said, the indoctrination that goes on in schools. These narratives from either the media, from the government, usually linked together, these narratives that they want to promote, and the ability to find alternatives. That's one of the blessings that has come out of the internet. And from all the bad stuff that is online, the bad stuff that comes from all this media, there are good opportunities. Just like I was criticizing television, but Bishop Sheen, one of our favorites, used television to promote good, to evangelize. He was able to use it for good, and that's one of the blessings that came out of this thing that overall has probably been a net negative on mankind.
But what do you think, Jake? For example, over there, with schooling, it's a lot like over here in this country, in that increasingly schooling is becoming more technological. So they're there. They all have like, a Chromebook that they're given.
Yeah.
They all have a tablet that they're given.
Yeah.
So like we're already sort of doing the damage.
Yes.
In addicting them to these different screens.
Yes.
As part of our, cultural education. We know that it's bad for them. Like, I mean, we even know this before we had studies. Like, come on, who actually thought that this would like give them a higher quality of education? I have no idea.
Yeah.
But like now we have the studies that says no, if you actually write with a pen, it like lights up way more of your brain than if you start typing. It's like, oh,
Yes.
duh. And that's kind of where I am. And then you're like, oh, well, let's do this for 10-year-olds. Let's get them in the classroom and let's give them all, a Kindle Fire or whatever, or a Chromebook, and then have them learn that way. It's like, no, you're just entertaining yourself.
You're just deadening the brain even
Yes.
further. It's the opposite of educating them.
And then you're like, oh, but now you can't go and use all that at home. No, because even though you've used this for 8 hours here at school, it's somehow a problem when you're going to go home and use it for another 5 there.
Yeah, especially,
it's
especially if you watch a YouTube video that contradicts what teacher's been telling you, and you have to obey your teacher, and especially obey your teacher more than you would obey your parents, and tell your teacher about all of these problems you've been having, so that they can then groom you into being trans and getting et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We've seen it happen. We've seen it. The news stories are endless. We cover them here on Rise Right. And one other note here that's interesting is that the U.S. has spoken quite firmly against this ban. The U.S. Embassy in London, has warned that regulations should be narrow and not violate free speech protections. It was also concerned that regulations would place greater burdens on American technology companies. Of course, there's an economic angle to that, the regulatory angle. But the point is, look, you're trying to enforce what you want ideologically. I think the U.S. sees some of this in the conflict between the tensions between the U.S. and the U.K. on many matters. So that's we're not alone in noticing that.
I'm still
that
waiting
trend.
until like a Brit comes to the United States as like and claims asylum,
Right.
after they've been persecuted for something speech related.
Yeah.
And then in an American court, they'd actually have to explain, well, there are no free speech protections here. We say under natural law in America that every person has the right to free speech. Ergo, I'm waiting for that case.
Yes.
I am, excitedly.
I think it'll happen. I think if the UK continues the direction it's going to happen sooner or later.